I never imagined that St. Patrick's Day would be the day my own family betrayed me. But as I sat in my grandfather's old Boston townhouse, surrounded by relatives who barely spoke to me throughout the year, I felt the weight of their deception settle on my chest like a stone. The lawyer, a stern-looking man with thick-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat and read the words that shattered my world. The O'Malley Irish Pub, along with all associated assets, is hereby bequeathed to Connor O'Malley. The room remained silent for a split second before my cousin Connor, with his ever-present cocky grin, exhaled in relief and laughed. Well, looks like I finally hit the jackpot, he chuckled, elbowing his father, who beamed with pride. Meanwhile, I sat frozen, gripping the arms of my chair so tightly that my knuckles turned white. This had to be a mistake. My grandfather had always promised me that the pub, the place I had spent most of my life managing, would be mine. I had been the one keeping it afloat, ensuring its survival while Connor was off gambling and partying. I had sacrificed everything for that place, believing that one day it would be my legacy. I turned to the lawyer, my voice barely above a whisper. "Excuse me, what?" He adjusted his glasses and gave me a sympathetic look, but his tone remained professional. "The will is clear, Miss O'Malley. Your grandfather left the pub and all related assets to Connor." I glanced around the room, searching for an explanation. My mother avoided my gaze, fidgeting with the pearl necklace my grandfather had given her years ago. My uncle, Connor's father, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed smugly. My father, always the silent observer, let out a deep sigh but said nothing. It was my mother who finally broke the silence. "Maeve, sweetheart," she began, her voice laced with forced kindness. "Your grandfather knew you were already successful on your own. You don't need the pub." Connor smirked. "Yeah, Maeve, don't be greedy. I mean, it's not like you don't have a good job, right?" My jaw clenched. A good job? Did they really think that working 12-hour shifts at the pub, covering expenses, handling suppliers, and making sure it didn't go under was just a job? I had poured my blood, sweat, and soul into that place. Connor hadn't lifted a finger for it, had never even shown interest in it until now. And yet, here he was, walking away with everything I had worked for. Anger simmered beneath my skin, but I bit it back. There had to be a mistake, a loophole, something. My grandfather wouldn't have done this to me, not after all we had built together. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stood up, forcing my expression to remain neutral. "I'd like to see the will." The lawyer hesitated but nodded, sliding a copy across the table. I snatched it up, scanning the pages quickly. My stomach twisted. It was all there, in black and white. I had been cut out completely. After the reading of the will, my family did what they always did. Celebrated. While my world had just crumbled, they moved on like nothing had happened, laughing and clinking glasses in the parlor. The betrayal was suffocating, but I wasn't about to break down in front of them. I needed answers. I slipped out of the townhouse and headed to the one place where my grandfather's presence still lingered, the O'Malley Irish Pub. The chilly March air nipped at my cheeks as I walked through the dimly lit streets of Boston, St. Patrick's Day decorations still hanging from every street corner. When I reached the pub, I hesitated before pushing the heavy wooden door open. The scent of aged whiskey and mahogany wrapped around me, a cruel reminder of everything I had just lost. Behind the bar stood Sean, my grandfather's oldest friend and the pub's longest-serving bartender. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Maeve?" I exhaled, forcing a small smile. "Hey, Sean." He wiped his hands on a bar towel and gestured for me to sit. "Heard the news." His tone was cautious. "You okay?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Not really." Sean leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Something doesn't sit right about this, kid. Your granddad always told me you'd take over the pub. He was proud of you." I nodded, my throat tightening. "That's what I thought too." Sean hesitated before glancing toward the back office. "His original will? I saw it once, years ago. It didn't look like that one." My heart stilled. "What do you mean?" Sean sighed. He had a copy here in the safe. If it's still there, maybe it's worth taking a look. Hope flickered in my chest. If what Sean was saying was true, then someone had changed the will. And if they had changed it, that meant there was a chance to fix this. I stood up, determination tightening my spine. Where's the key? Sean gave me a wary look. You sure you want to go down this road, kid? I met his gaze, steel in my voice. I'm not letting them steal what's mine. He nodded, reaching under the bar and pulling out a small brass key. Be careful, Maeve. If you're right about this, it means someone in your family went through a lot of trouble to cut you out. I clenched the key in my fist. Then it's time I found out who. With my heart pounding, I made my way toward the office. I had a feeling that tonight would be the night everything changed. For better or worse, I sat at the table, my mind spinning. The betrayal stung like ice water down my spine. My mother still refused to meet my eyes. You already have a good career, Maeve. Connor needs this chance. My uncle chimed in, nodding at his son. Your grandfather always wanted the pub to stay in the family. Connor will keep it running. I turned to Connor, who simply smirked, raising his glass of whiskey and a mock toast. Don't take it personally, cuz, he said. It's just business. Rage bubbled inside me, hot and suffocating. I had sacrificed years of my life for this pub, and now it was being handed to a man who had never worked a day for it. Connor had spent his 20s partying, gambling, and racking up debts, only to have the family clean up his messes. Now, they were rewarding him. My hands clenched into fists under the table. This wasn't over. I forced myself to take a deep breath, pushing down the raw anger threatening to take control. If I exploded now, they would only see me as bitter and emotional. No, I needed a plan, and I needed to find out the truth. I turned my gaze to my mother. Did Grandpa tell you he was giving Connor the pub? She hesitated, lips pressing together in a thin line. It was his decision, Maeve. That's not what I asked. She exhaled, looking at my father for support. He didn't have to tell me. My heart pounded. That was a lie. My grandfather had always discussed important decisions with my mother, even when I was a child. He had once told me that trust was built through transparency. If he had truly made this decision, he would have told someone. And yet, he hadn't. I glanced at Connor, who was already soaking in the attention, relishing his newfound status. Something about the situation gnawed at me. The will had changed hands quickly. Too quickly. And Sean had mentioned that the original will looked different. Could Connor have had something to do with it? I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Excuse me. I didn't wait for a response before heading toward the coat closet. I needed fresh air, but more than that, I needed to get back to the pub. If there was a different version of the will, I had to find it. As I grabbed my coat, Connor's voice followed me. Running away already? I paused, turning slowly to face him. Enjoy your whiskey, Connor, I said, my voice cool and measured. You won't be celebrating for long. His smile faltered just for a second. Then he leaned back, smirking once more. We'll see about that. I clenched my jaw, shoving open the door and stepping into the crisp night air. The city buzzed around me, St. Patrick's Day revelers spilling onto the streets, their laughter and cheers stark against the storm brewing inside me. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sean's number. He picked up on the second ring. Maeve? I'm coming back to the pub, I said. We need to open that safe. Sean was silent for a moment. Then, with quiet determination, he replied, I'll be waiting. I hung up and hailed a cab. I had a feeling that whatever was inside that safe would change everything, for better or worse. The cab ride felt like an eternity. The city lights blurred past my window as I tapped my fingers anxiously against my knee. My mind raced through possibilities. What if the safe was empty? What if someone had already gotten to it? What if I was wrong about everything? Number, I wasn't wrong. I couldn't be. When the cab finally pulled up in front of the O'Malley pub, I paid the driver and stepped out. The pub was quiet now, the St. Patrick's Day crowd having moved on to livelier places. Sean stood just inside waiting for me. He had already retrieved the key to the office. "Are you sure about this?" Sean asked as he led me to the back. I nodded. "I need to know the truth." Sean unlocked the office door and flipped on the light. The room was exactly as my grandfather had left it. Old leather chairs, a wooden desk worn with years of use, and the smell of aged whiskey lingering in the air. But my eyes went straight to the large metal safe in the corner. I knelt before it, my hands trembling slightly as I inserted the key Sean had given me earlier that night. The lock clicked open, and I took a deep breath before pulling the door wide. Inside, there were stacks of old records, some cash, and, most importantly, an envelope labeled Last Will and Testament. My heart pounded as I grabbed the envelope and tore it open. My eyes scanned the neatly typed words, and there it was. Maeve O'Malley is the sole inheritor of O'Malley Pub and its assets. I stood in the dimly lit office of the O'Malley Pub, my fingers trembling as I held the original will in my hands. The paper was old but intact, the ink slightly faded but legible. And there it was, in black and white. My grandfather had left everything to me. My breath came in shallow gasps as my eyes flicked to the second document I had found in the safe. The newer will, the one read aloud earlier that evening, bore the same formatting, the same layout, but the signature looked different. Too precise. Too smooth. It was a forgery. My heart pounded in my chest as the realization sank in. Connor had stolen from me. He had not only manipulated our family into believing he was the rightful heir, but he had forged a legal document to make it official. Sean stood beside me, his arms crossed. "I knew something wasn't right," he muttered. "Your granddad would never have handed this place over to that spoiled brat." I swallowed, my hands tightening around the papers. "I need proof," I said. "Something undeniable." Sean nodded. "We can start with a handwriting analysis. I know a guy who deals with this kind of thing. If this is a forgery, he'll confirm it." My mind was racing. I needed to act fast. If Connor got wind that I had found the original will, he might try to cover his tracks. Or worse, destroy any remaining evidence. I tucked both documents into my coat and turned to Sean. "Lock the office. Don't let anyone in." Sean gave me a firm nod. "You got it." Stepping out of the office, my body buzzed with adrenaline. The pub was still bustling with late-night drinkers, unaware of the war brewing behind the scenes. As I made my way through the crowd, I spotted Connor at the bar, laughing with his friends, a fresh pint of Guinness in his hand. My blood boiled. He had no idea that his little scheme was about to come crashing down. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. If I was going to bring him down, I needed a lawyer. Someone ruthless. Someone who wouldn't be intimidated by the O'Malley name. I found the number I was looking for and hit dial. After 3 rings, a voice answered. "Murphy Law Offices? This is Patrick Murphy." I took a deep breath. "Mr. Murphy, my name is Maeve O'Malley. I need your help." There was a pause. Then, "O'Malley? As in the pub?" "Yes," I said. "And I think I just uncovered a forged will." Murphy exhaled sharply. "That's a serious accusation." "I have proof," I said. "I just need someone to help me bring it to light." Murphy was silent for a moment, then said, "Meet me at my office first thing in the morning. Bring everything you have." "I'll be there." I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my pocket. As I turned, I found myself face to face with Connor. "Who are you calling?" he asked, his smirk widening. "Planning your next career move now that you're officially out of the family business?" I forced myself to stay calm. "Just making arrangements," I said smoothly. "You know, moving on like you suggested." Connor chuckled, clearly pleased with himself. "That's the spirit. No hard feelings, right?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "None at all." He patted my shoulder, completely oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my composed exterior. "See you around, cousin." As he turned back to his friends, my smile faded. He had no idea what was coming for him. The next morning, I arrived at Murphy's office, my coat still damp from the misty Boston air. I handed over both wills, and Murphy studied them closely. "Good catch," he said after a moment. "The signatures don't match. We'll have to get a forensic document examiner to confirm, but this looks bad for your cousin." "How long will that take?" I asked. "A few days," Murphy replied. "But in the meantime, I suggest you start preparing for a legal fight. If Connor thinks he's in the clear, he won't see this coming." I nodded, determination settling in my bones. "Let's take him down." Murphy grinned. "Now that's what I like to hear." As I left the office, I felt something I hadn't in days. Hope. I wasn't going to let Connor get away with this. And when the truth came out, he would have no choice but to face the consequences. The game had just begun. The morning air was crisp as I walked toward O'Malley Pub. The sun had barely risen, but I was already wide awake, fueled by the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Today was the day Connor's web of lies would come crashing down. I had spent the night preparing with Murphy, gathering every shred of evidence. The forensic document examiner had confirmed it. Connor had forged the will, and now the law was on my side. As I approached the pub, I saw him standing outside, laughing with a group of real estate agents. My stomach twisted at the sight. He was so confident, so smug, convinced he had won. I pushed open the door, the familiar scent of aged whiskey filling my lungs. Sean was behind the bar, wiping down the counter, but he gave me a nod, the signal that everything was set. Connor noticed me then, his grin widening. Well, if it isn't the sore loser. I walked toward him, my face unreadable. "Enjoying your victory lap?" He chuckled, lifting his coffee. "You could say that. Just about to finalize the sale. Turns out this place is worth more than I thought." I felt my fingers curl into fists, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Funny," I said, pulling a folded piece of paper from my coat. "Because I have something that might change your plans." Connor's smirk faltered as he took the document from my hand. He scanned it quickly, his face paling. "What the hell is this?" "The original will," I said coolly. "The real one. The one Grandpa actually signed." His eyes darted to the signature at the bottom, then back to me. This is fake." I shook my head. "No, Connor. The one you submitted is fake. And I have a forensic expert who agrees." His hands trembled slightly as he looked to his father, but my uncle was already backing away, his face tight with realization. "Connor, tell me this isn't true." Before he could answer, the front door swung open. Murphy walked in, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. The room fell silent. "Connor O'Malley?" one of the officers said, stepping forward. "We need to have a word with you." Connor's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. Murphy handed over another document. "This is a court order invalidating the fraudulent will. The pub legally belongs to Maeve." My cousin looked at me then, desperation creeping into his features. "You can't do this." I tilted my head. "Can I?" The officer took another step. "Mr. O'Malley, we have evidence of document forgery and fraud. You need to come with us." Connor's mouth opened, but no words came out. The agents he had been speaking to moments ago were already collecting their things, murmuring among themselves as they hurried out the door. Sean leaned against the bar, watching as the officers escorted Connor outside. "Well," he said, smirking. "That was satisfying," I exhaled, the weight on my shoulders finally lifting. "Yeah," I admitted. "It was." Murphy turned to me, extending a hand. "Congratulations, Maeve. The pub is yours." I shook his hand, feeling the reality of it settle in. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. As the door swung shut behind them, I looked around the pub. My pub. The place my grandfather had built. The place I had fought for. The place that was finally back where it belonged. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at home. That evening, I stood behind the bar, the familiar weight of a whiskey glass in my hand. The pub was alive with laughter and warmth, filled with the chatter of loyal patrons who had been coming here for years. But tonight, it felt different. Tonight, it was mine. The past few days had been exhausting, but as I looked around, I knew it had been worth it. The betrayal, the fight, the uncertainty. It had all led to this moment. The O'Malley pub was back where it belonged. Sean leaned against the bar, shaking his head with a smirk. "Didn't think I'd see the day," he said, pouring himself a drink. "You actually pulled it off." I smiled, setting down my glass. "You never had any doubts, did you?" He chuckled. "Not about you, no, but your family? Whole different story." The word family hung in the air for a moment, heavier than I expected. The truth was, I had lost them. My mother, my uncle, the relatives who had so easily turned their backs on me, they wouldn't be calling anytime soon. But as I looked around the pub, at the faces of people who had supported me, I realized something important. Family isn't just blood. Family is loyalty. Family is those who stand by you when everything falls apart. Connor, on the other hand, had lost everything. His father had all but disowned him, unwilling to be dragged down with him. The sale of the pub had fallen through, and instead of celebrating his newfound wealth, Connor had been forced to answer for his crimes. Last I heard, he was scrambling to avoid serious jail time. Poetic justice. I raised my glass, letting the golden liquid catch the light. "To new beginnings," I said. "To finally getting what you deserve," Sean added, clinking his glass against mine. I took a slow sip, letting the warmth of the whiskey spread through me. This St. Patrick's Day, I wasn't just celebrating the pub. I was celebrating freedom. The freedom to live life on my terms, without seeking approval from people who never truly valued me. The band in the corner struck up an old Irish tune, and the energy in the room lifted. I felt lighter than I had in years. I turned to the crowd, raising my voice over the music. "Drinks are on me tonight." A loud cheer erupted, followed by the clinking of glasses and the familiar sounds of celebration. This was my home. This was my family. And for the first time in a long time, I belonged. As the night went on, I found myself stepping outside for a moment of quiet. The cool Boston air filled my lungs as I looked up at the sky, the stars barely visible against the city lights. A part of me still ached for what I had lost. No matter what Connor had done, no matter how my family had betrayed me, they were still my blood. And now, they were gone. But maybe that was okay. Maybe letting go of them meant I could finally move forward. Sean joined me outside, hands tucked into his coat pockets. "Thinking about them?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, it's just strange, you know? To fight so hard for something, only to realize that in winning, you've lost something else." Sean exhaled, nodding. "They made their choice, Maeve. And you made yours. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it does mean you're free." Free. That word settled in my chest, warm and solid. "I guess so," I said softly. "For the first time in a long time, I actually feel like I know who I am." He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "That's worth more than any inheritance." I smiled, looking back toward the pub, the golden light spilling onto the sidewalk. My grandfather had built that place with his own hands, poured his heart into it. And now, it was mine to carry forward. Not just as a business, but as a legacy. A place where people could come together, share stories, and find family in one another. Taking one last deep breath of the cold night air, I turned back toward the pub. "Come on," I said to Sean. "We've got a party to get back to." Inside, I took my place behind the bar, pouring drinks, laughing with customers, feeling more at home than I ever had. This wasn't just a victory. It was a new beginning. And as I lifted my glass once more, I knew one thing for sure. I had finally won. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible real life tales. Cheers!